Okay, so this is day 62 of being housed. It's Thursday, October the 16th. I'm going to continue from the last video. It's just time about the owner's mother and, the way things are currently there. And, the manipulation coming from the owner's mother has, it's evolved into a place where she has talked with the owner and mentioned, he mentioned to me, he divulged a lot of information. We can learn a lot from this, which is you don't have to divulge your personal information. And if people try to probe you to divulge your personal information, it's because they're nosy. If people are nosy, it's because in their mind, they're overstepping boundaries. To be very honest and understanding of that, and you're allowed to set up boundaries against these things. And it can, going through a situation like this, can reveal why some people might struggle with establishing boundaries or even understanding that you're able to establish boundaries because the opposite has been modeled to them. But with what the owner has shared with me, which is really good insight, he said that she was talking with him and she got angry at the one time, like when he was talking about his book. And she's like, I bet you he didn't even buy your book. So this young man's book sale was about 15 years ago. It was a long time ago. It has nothing to do with today, but she's trying to bring that up as an attack on my character, an attack on, our friendship or our relationship. And he said, I just looked at her and I said, no, he did buy. He's one of the few people that did buy the book. He's very supportive, which I did. And I know I am. And he's like, and that kind of, got her to step back for a moment. And I was thinking, but you're divulging this to me. What you're really divulging is, there seems to be a targeted attack on me. It doesn't seem like I'm actually even doing anything. It just seems like I'm targeted, and she's just looking for evidence to support, the verdict that's already been passed in her mind. And and then he was saying that, well, she doesn't like to be confrontational, so she says things indirectly. And so, when she's talking about different things, say with the not being able to find her goodness grocery bags, or the juice maybe being somebody drank the juice or whatever, maybe probe and ask her, if she's actually talking about you, because she doesn't want to be confrontational. I find her to be hyper confrontational. I find her to be completely unreasonable and terrible to be around, completely terrible to be around. And but that's manipulation, when you frame things differently and you have your own narrative, and you want people to see things from your perspective as opposed to the actuality that they're playing out. That's manipulation. That's rooted in lies, and that is very devious, and it's devilish. Those are templates and qualities and characteristics of the devil or the adversary. And so that reveals the source of these things, but also she's saying those things. And then he mentioned to me that oh goodness, what did he mention? So he's telling me these things, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, she complains nonstop when I'm around her. It would actually be impossible for me to say, oh, could this be about me? Could this be about me? Could this be about me? That's gonna model poor behavior, because then I'm actually catering to somebody who is manipulative. So that would be similar to being in a household where the child and the spirit that's over the child rules the roof. So or the roost, however that's the expression goes, and then where everybody walks on eggshells around the child. So the one that's the least mature is actually modeling the behavior in the house. That's not right, and this should not be tolerated. And so this is what's going on there. And it's wise to be able to identify these things for the root, and then make sure that I don't do this myself. I have to make sure that I don't have any of this in my own heart. So I have to make sure I don't have any of this in my heart. And, and that's the way you ensure that specific thing doesn't continue. And, but it's dangerous because it can corrupt your own thoughts. And but I've noted that these are temper tantrums that she's throwing. And the other, and then also too, she said to him, she said, he's not helping me out, I'm financially stressed. That makes absolutely no sense to me. I was in a time of need. I came and I worked out an agreement. I was very honest and transparent about what I had. I worked out an agreement with the owner, and nobody mentioned about even when I mentioned about the how much I'd be paying for rent, and to rent the room. He could have said, to help with the utilities, could you pay X amount to my mother each week? And I said, oh yeah, that's fine. I could, once you present that to me, I can say yes or no. But it's also a very immature yet rather shrewd business strategy to have that maybe in your mind and say, I'm just going to admit that information now. And I'm not saying that they did this, but I'm also not saying that they didn't do this. I'm saying it's a potential, but to have it in your mind and to say, we're just wait till he comes in, and then, I'll proposition that to him. Well, then you're not being forthright, and you're not being honest, and you're not giving the other person the opportunity to chew on your proposition and then to come into agreement with it. It's kind of like you're forcing that on them. Potentially that's what's happened here, because it seems like the mother seemed like she was pretty entitled to me helping her out. So it makes you wonder if there was like a pre-arrangement between her and the owner of the house. And anyhow, so now she seems to have that attitude of entitlement. So now that's where the abuse can spring in. Well, you're not helping me. Well, you don't get to use this and this and this. And anytime I'm angry, I'm going to take it out on you. That just reminds me of a prepubescent child, to be quite honest. That's what children do. They throw temper tantrums. And when you're a child, I got my niece. My niece is adorable, but my niece, if you allow her, she will rule the roost, and she will eat nothing but muffins and icing every day. And she's adorable, but she's a child, and she doesn't need friends. She needs her parents. She needs her uncle to model proper behavior and to not allow her to, get her own way, because she'll bring her own herself to destruction. If you eat muffins and icing every day, it's not going to end up well for you, and your demise will come quickly. And but when you're an adult, you have the responsibility of, I get it, terrible things have happened. I truly get it. And I'm not attacking that. I'm definitely not being insensitive to that. But it's not a justifiable reason for you to do terrible things to others. And as much as you hate it, other people doing those terrible things to you, the moment you start doing those terrible things to others, you have to be accountable for that. And if you get more and more aggressive, so people just shrink away from you, it's going to be harder for you to face that reality, because nobody ever says anything to you, because people just avoid you. And then I find personalities like that complain about feeling lonely. And I always think, well, your loneliness is tied to the darkness that's inside of you, the darkness that comes out every time you feel stressed out. You're dominated by finances. You're dominated by money. You're dominated by your insecurities. Your insecurities dominate you, and then you subsequently dominate others. You're dominated by a feeling of inferiority. You're dominated by all these things, and you're not facing any of them. So you're always remaining or regressing. And it's almost like it's one of the most terrible things to see, because then you can see a person like today, and then 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later, they seem like they haven't moved on at all, because they're being dominated in that spot. There can be no growth, and there can be no maturation when you're under a ruling of domination. It's similar to like somebody being locked up. You can't grow and gather, when you're locked up. You're stuck in that specific spot. Okay, so for me, what I've noted is everything has shrunk around me, which I'm completely comfortable with. I don't have the finances. When I had the finances, I would just say, oh no, this is bad. Oh no, I'm getting out of here. And somebody made a very witty comment yesterday, and they said, move out of the situation and get a cat. And I thought, oh no, there's truth in what they're saying. Sorry, the cat. Nothing against cats, but anyways, but this is good information to record and to get out. And I think like right now, one of the best things about this is just to reveal like, I've reserved thoughts. I've just done the best I can with what I had and what I have. And but there's been a lot of information that has come out. Information came out from the patterns of behavior. So the patternized behavior reveals a lot about the contents of people's hearts. And it reveals a lot about like their intent to change their behavior or to remain the same. The different things that the owner's mother has said to me and grumbled under her breath, get your own food, get your own this, get your own that. That's actually probably the most honest she is. If she actually would listen to the hate that's inside of her, she'd realize that actually is the clearest representation of how she truly feels. Everything else is just a performance. And if you perform, you're never going to change. And you're going to live for the applause, and you're going to die at the criticism. It's very easy to see, and you just become a very predictable person, which means that's not a good place to be in. It's actually a scary, scary, predictable place to be in. Oh my! I find the information, even with the owner. I really, really love the owner, but I found like he seemed to have lied about the the juice when I first went in there, or first moved in. We talked about the juice in front of his mother, and he said, no, I don't know why my mother would say this. That occurred before you even moved in. So that's what I took it as. And I even said that to the mother, and she doubled down on her anger towards me. And then when I brought that up to him, the last conversation, he said, well, and he wasn't forthright about it. And I said, did that not happen? He's like, well, and he still wouldn't be honest about it. When you admit something, that's a lie. When you purposely admit something in order to skew or to change or to alter somebody's like version of reality, from the actuality, that is actually like you're choosing a lie. That's manipulation. So he's already done that. There's been a few things that just don't add up, and I don't want to get caught up in trying to make sense out of things that are nonsensical, because then I can sit and it'll be like being on a rocking chair. You do a lot of movement, you get nowhere. So I just see things for the way they are, and I do the best I can. And one of the main things is to learn from these things, first and foremost, so I don't do these to others, but also to develop strategies, because these things can really hinder and hamper you. And but anyway, so all this information is poured out, and so it's wise to take time to actually sort through it and compartmentalize it, and then just adhere to this information reveals the actuality of the situation around me. So to start to adhere to not what people are saying, but what people are doing. So the actuality of what's taking place around you. So I find like with this situation, I'm going to be looking for a new place, and I'm going to trust God. I'm going to pray and ask God, so I'll have the fullness of belief. I think when Jesus says, if you believe without doubting, you can say to this mulberry tree, be moved to the sea, and it will be planted in the sea. So I'm going to pray and ask for a way of escape. But I'm also going to pray if there's anything that God would have me do while I'm here. There could be a learning lesson. It could be something like that. There could be an area of pride in my life that needs to be humbled. It could be, something he'd have me to speak to one of them. It could be a blessing he wants me to pray. It could be anything. So I'm just here about his business. But when I think about the situation, I think, okay, it's not conducive to growth. And I feel very restricted when I'm there. And that is very limiting. And I feel tired all the time. And so anyway, so I'm very thankful for the opportunity, but I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. And I find the moment I get to that point in my mind, that means actions are going to follow. And then when I leave too, I can love the people, and in spite of the things that they're doing, and I just ensure that I don't bring these things forward with me. And also, I now have experience to know how toxic and terrible these things are. And when people are doing these, they're virtually, it's about self-preservation. It's about, protecting the things they have. It's about, somebody who's selfish is rooted, like their heart is rooted in greed. And you realize how that shuts other people out, and then you become very alone. You're around people all the time, but you're very lonely because there's no actual loving connection. There's no spiritual connection. There's no deeper connection, and life will go by. And that is, I find, like, when we're not connected to others in sincerity and in love, we don't realize how nurturing that is. And if you lack that, or if that's voided in your life, you can wither away. And it's something that would have to be taken very seriously. And one of the most dangerous things is, the more you're used to it, the more you're used to withering, the more you can just simply, get addicted to pharmaceuticals and to street drugs and this and that to help manage the pain. But the pain is deeper than the drugs could ever reach. So I say this with love. I don't mean this as an attack on anybody. I want to see everybody whole and complete. Everybody set free from like any spiritual darkness. Everybody's eyes opened to the reality around them. But if you're not, it's the people who have to move away from these circumstances, because they can be draining and they can corrupt those that are not a part of these things. So it's like they would have to come to a point of strength where they let go of all these things and they realize that, no, I have to do this because these things are killing me. They're destroying my life. They're terrible. Anyways, so that's that. And I'm going to conclude this video.